Finding the right person for the job isn't easy. Just ask someone who hired a stuntman to do their home renovations.
Just finished a new sunroom, Mrs. C. The best part is I used candy glass for all the windows, so you can do this. And this. Doesn't hurt a bit either.
But if you've got an insurance question, you can always count on your local Geico agent. They can bundle your policies, which could save you hundreds.
And if you don't want to take the long way to the kitchen, the walls are breakaway too. See?
For expert help with all your insurance needs, visit geico.com/local today.
At JCPenney's 4th of July sale, it's all stars, stripes, and savings. Enjoy up to 50% off select furniture, mattresses, and window coverings. Plus, shop thousands of doorbusters across the store or use your coupon for additional savings. Take advantage of extended store hours Friday and Saturday. It's time to refresh your star-spangled manor. Shopping is back. JCPenney. Offers N74. Exclusions apply. Doorbusters excluded from coupons. See jcp.com for details.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Let's get this party started. We've got a great episode coming up for you. I'm not going to give it all away, but it involves a lot of Peter and bicycles. I'm Barry Williams.
And I'm Christopher Knight.
And we are
the real Brady Bros.
We're getting better at it.
We
might have nailed that. Okay, so this was such fun to go through. A lot of elements in here that I really liked. I liked our brotherly exchanges. I liked that Dad was very, very supportive. The girls got involved and they kind of helped us out, all that stuff, all of which we'll get to. But tell us, Chris, a little bit about who's behind the scenes for how to succeed in this.
I love this episode for one major reason, and that it was one of the 4 episodes directed by Robert Reed. So this is How to Succeed in Business, Season 4. It's first aired February 23rd. 1973, the 19th episode of Season 4, and the 91st overall episode to air. Written by Gene Thompson, as directed by Robert Reed, guest starring in a lovely performance, Jay Novello as Mr. Martinelli. Now, this episode I'm very fond of because sort of something happened personally in this episode that helped me grow by leaps. Maybe I'm over-dramatizing it, but when I look back on a sense of self, this was a moment that I reflect on as the beginning of, a foundation of confidence, of self, of opinion.
Well, do share.
Well, it was just simply at the first day of showing up. I believe the bike shop was our first scene. And Bob didn't necessarily come in saying, okay, you stand here, you need to deliver your lines, and then we'll cover it. Like, he basically came to me and said, so Chris, how do you see this this being blocked? How do you see this working? And it was like it literally an eye-opening experience. It was, I always had ideas, but no adult had really asked me for my ideas. And at home, it was a real struggle, to get validation. If you were looking for validation, you were going to get just the opposite. But Bob, in a creative way, gave me the satisfaction that my ideas had value. And I remember earlier probably having an idea that my ideas could hold sway. And one, I can't remember what episode it was, but the line was, "We're in a hurry." Now, I was born in New York. Didn't really learn to speak while I was in New York, but my parents were New Yorkers, and they had slight New York accents. I mean, it sort of dissipated over the years, but I don't know what it was about my nerves, but as soon as hurry came out of my mouth, it was hurry. And we did 8 takes, and it was clear. I was blowing it, right? And I couldn't get out hurry. It came out hurry. Cut, Chris, it's hurry. And it would do it again. It was just like 3 lines long. And feeling the pressure, I said, can I say rush? And it was like, yes. And there was a moment there where I realized, sometimes I can help myself and help others. I should speak up. And I was timid, I guess. And it took me a while. But it was in this episode that I learned that my view had value.
I'm so glad you shared that story. And I talk about actors directing actors quite a bit over the years, and it is one of my favorite things because of just what you're talking about. Another actor understands the acting dilemma, and there are a lot of things that it's not just a question of always following direction, even though many directors take that position. I think there are a couple of things operating with Robert Reed, and one is to give you a sense that there is more than one way to do something so that you can apply yourself to doing that. And he was reminding you that as an actor, that can be a responsibility for you to assume. So he's guiding there a little bit. He's a little bit of mentoring. But throughout the episode, that is influenced with everything that's being done. So it becomes, instead of just being like a Xerox machine,
Like a vending machine.
or a vending machine, you're actually creating something. You're actually taking what is not there and then building it and improving it and then making it something that it wasn't until the creative aspect had been employed. And Robert was filled with those kinds of ideas.
And I see that through this episode. I'll bring out the moments that I saw in watching this episode where I thought it was a very creative directorial choice. I mean, he did at least two things in this show that had never been done before, or shots. But I also noticed in my own performance levels. You know, he got out of me, out of the character, these levels that I wish there were more of. But like when we worked with like Oscar Rudolph, my job working for him was to supply energy. And if of any of us who should have been somebody to, except for you, Chris, you don't have to supply more energy because I was already off the charts. And then with Oscar, it was, ridiculously off the chart because that's the one direction he always gave us. He was afraid of us,
Up.
Yeah, up, and energy. I don't, and as a kid, I don't know what that means. What does energy mean? So working with Bob was he was an actor, and he was teaching us both by example and in this particular case, forthright. How to make something real, where the real comes from, and making me realize that acting is being, and you're a being. So how would your being do this? And then we'll make it work from there.
Before we get into the nitty gritty of the plot lines and the moments and things, would you? I was struck by one thing, and I was hoping you could add. Who was responsible for your haircut in this episode?
This is the 4th season. We're back from Hawaii.
A lot of hair going on there, Chris.
Well, yeah, but it gets worse in the 5th year. I mean, look at it. Because it's not quite frizzy yet. Remember when your hair went through that kind of, wasn't really silky anymore, wasn't totally curly anymore, but my hair would go through an entire head of fuzz in the following year. So this is long hair going from sort of wavy to getting curly. Isn't yet the hair I have now, the curly hair I have now. But you can see from the waves, it's getting there. And I wanted long hair, it was the time. And
well,
so
boy, you sure covered your ears up.
it was a choice. It was a mop top,
give me a head with hair, long, beautiful hair, streaming, screaming, fleecing, flaxen,
the hair in
waxen.
the 5th season because that was a riot right there. That was me in rebellion saying because they always wanted me to get my hair cut, and I said no.
It's very debonair. Very debonair.
I'm glad you loved it.
Oh, by the way, this episode also starts with you bombing in on a bicycle, and you could ride that bike and were like aggressively and fast and stuff. But then you did a very interesting thing as you slid toward the carport on the Brady driveway. You just step off the bike while you're moving and throw it against the fence.
Yeah. And by the way, I just happened to watch another episode. I can't remember what episode it was. It wasn't me. It was, I think, Jan does this same thing. Same way.
What's up with that?
I don't know. I mean, it's I guess to get rid of the business as quickly as possible. I thought the weirdest thing, craziest thing about that moment is that I'm directed to go back to it. Now, I don't have a recollection of that moment to know. Obviously, I go back to the bike to get books, but it was built in that I'm going back to the bike. So I guess that it fell over. It didn't really matter. And it kind of looked like I was going back to set up the bike again, but I'm really going back to get books out of the what'd you call those things in the day when you had
basket.
the rack? Yeah, the spring rack.
Basket. The thing also that as I watched the rest of the episode, you ride your bike in 2 more times, and each time you slide the kickstand out, like with your left foot, like it's the easiest thing in the world, and jump off, and then the bike is standing there. So I didn't understand why you didn't do that the first time. It was funny, though.
Clearly, what you're pointing out is the bike did have a kickstand. I think some of these bikes didn't even have a kickstand. That's why they were laid against the fence. Yeah,
Maybe
I don't know.
You fixed it.
It was
Maybe
a
you fixed it at
directorial
Mr.
choice.
Martinelli's.
Let's hope. That's okay. We'll use that. We'll use that as the reason. One of the reasons I got the job is I knew how to fix a kickstand.
Maybe you swiped it. You swiped the kickstand and then installed it in between those scenes.
There, so that's how I got the job, by taking a kickstand from Mr. Martinelli, putting
and blaming someone else.
You did that, Peter. So now here's a job. Here's how you're going to pay for that. So I don't know why that. I thought it was really odd, but really real too. I mean, kind of looking over your shoulder, the bike kind of fell down, and then running back to the bike and kind of setting it back up and getting the books out, and then running almost through what would have been the sliding glass door. Did you notice that? I almost didn't open the door.
Almost.
And then open it in my excitement, yelling, "It happened. It happened." It's like, what is it that you would normally shout? It happened. It happened. And normally at, 14. I thought it was, interesting because that sets up the next scene and the fun that I have.
Tell us what it is. What are you so excited about?
Peter is apparently just come back from applying for a job at Mr. Martinelli's bike shop, and he's assuming he's getting the job. Like we'll discover in this episode, Peter is oblivious to things around him, so he misreads everything, and he could have, from the very beginning, misread getting the job. In this particular case, he'll ultimately be correct, but literally running into Anne, and there's a moment when Peter meets Ann B. Davis or Alice in the kitchen right next to the refrigerator, where we literally slam up to one another. And now I don't remember the moment, but I can guess that was a directorial choice of Bob. He said, "No, really, run into Ann. Run into Ann. Don't stop before me." And Ann she's such an athlete. And this is a little moment of proof of that. Because here I'm flying in at 40 miles an hour, and, she's like Dick Butkus. She's right there and doesn't move as I slam into her.
I'm sure she'd appreciate the analogy.
Well, she stood her ground, and there was, no fright on her. And I don't mean it that way, Barry. I mean, I look at the moment and go, wow, most actresses would have flinched from being run over. But the only way that it could have been done is that she had to apply resistance to my smashing into her, and she was there for it. And to me, it worked. It was a funny little. I didn't have that many scenes with Anne, and just the two of us with some repartee. And I look back on that, and go, I wish I had more, because it worked. And then at one point, a little unreal in that I apparently have to hurt Mr. Martinelli's ear through the phone with my excitement. I literally squeal. And I guess that's a directorial choice. I guess
it sounds like an
squeal.
actor choice.
Well, I mean, it's written. I have to squeal into the phone is probably what the direction was, and so I took it literally, and I squeal like a 10-year-old girl. In any case,
I said, an actor's choice.
Peter has got a job. It's happened. And of course, after not really, leaving Alice not knowing what just happened, he runs out of the kitchen, and we'll see him pop up kind of in the den. And this is one of those moments, this directorial choice by Bob, to use an area of the set that I don't believe had ever been used before. Peter announces it happened to Mom and Dad, who are in the den, from outside the den and through that area that was normally blocked off by shutters above the fireplace, the two-sided fireplace, one side being living room, other side being the den. It was an opening, above it, closed off by shutters, movable shutters. Bob had me kind of peer down from the landing above the den and speak to Mom and Dad from there, which is probably what I would have done if I was a kid. I probably, in real life, us Brady boys were climbing up there all the time.
And there you go. That's what he's looking for, new ways to show things and to be creative, and and utilize the set that's there. So it's not just done over and over and over again.
Good. And remember what happens next. So, Peter now, because he's got a job, he is no longer going to be a burden to the family. I didn't realize that the Bradys thought like that. I don't see any of the other Bradys having a job, but gladly saying that he's no longer going to need an allowance. Right. Surprising mom and dad.
That didn't last long.
Well, now getting a job, Dad gives me
your allowance.
He suggests I really want to miss my allowance. I said, well, Peter says,
one more.
Well, one more for
okay. Right.
But excitedly leaving the room, trips and falls, Dick Van Patten style.
Van Dyke, maybe?
Did I say Van Patten? Yeah, Dick Van Dyke style. Thank you very much. And Dad had just given me the three things I needed to be if I'm going to be a good employee, and that is...
this is takeaway stuff.
Right.
This is takeaway stuff.
Prompt, hardworking, and loyal. It'll turn out that you need to do quite a bit more than just those three things to keep a job. But upon falling down on the way out of the room, Carol adds, and don't be clumsy. Cute. It was all very cute. So, I guess Peter absorbs that because he adds a couple extra when we first see him in the bike shop. Mm-hmm. Working on the bike. Although the first time he's interacting with Mr. Martinelli, he's polishing the drinking fountain. He's like distracted on something else, and drinking out of a Dixie cup. Maybe because the drinking fountain wasn't a non-functioning drinking fountain, so you couldn't show me drinking out of it. So they gave me a Dixie cup with water in it. But I'm polishing the water fountain, clearly implying the kid's a little distractible.
Well, that's the hard-working part of prompt and loyal.
Right, and he comes in with, he promises other things too, like honest, and there's 9 different things that Peter's able to supply, but none of them are worthwhile. Because ultimately we'll find out that keeping a job is difficult for the Peter character because, he's working on a bike. I'm very proud of the gear, having Mr. Martinelli listen to the lack of sound of gears grinding because there was no gear working when the tires just spinning, and proudly claiming 1 down, 9 to go. And Mr. Martinelli announces that it's close to closing time, which Peter is, wow, thank you, Mr. Martinelli. When you're doing something you love to do, essentially, I would lost all track of time. And of course, not understanding the worry
that it took you all day to do 1 gear of a 10 gear,
and getting very greasy in doing it. Yeah,
yeah.
Well, you notice he oils everything a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Well, also, let's talk about that oil can for a second. That is the biggest, baddest oil machine for doing chains or whatever I've ever seen. It looks like you could literally lubricate a tractor with this thing. I'd never seen anything that. Usually oil comes out little drops. This thing looks like it's going to. It just shoots oil.
I think this was a grease gun.
Like a grease gun, yes.
It was a grease gun that they put oil in. Special effects had something to do with it. Anyway, so Peter's thankful to Mr. Martinelli for reminding him that it's closing time because boy, he would have just kept on working. He loves what he does so much. And you see the worry in Mr. Martinelli's face. This is Peter's first day. I don't know what Peter did to get this job. I mean, he'll claim later he's 14. By the way, I don't know if there's another instance of one of us as the Brady kids actually enunciating our age.
Yeah, I caught that too, and I don't remember. I know that we did not discuss our ages. It was always, well, we're about the same age as we're playing. I don't remember really identifying them on the show in dialogue.
And this kind of makes me a year older than I would have thought I would have been in the 4th season. I'm thinking maybe I was 13 in it. This show, Peter claims he's 14. Got to take him at his word. So, but when Peter comes home from fixing his bikes, the 1 gear, Bobby and Cindy are set up an enterprise.
Now, this is great. This tells us a lot about the shenanigans in the Brady family and what's tolerated, because they obviously got together, Bobby and Cindy, to work this thing out and then lay it on you.
It was just insane. How many bikes were against the fence? I mean, they're all now leaned. Like none of those bikes had kickstands because they're all leaned against the fence.
Yeah, a dozen,
like 10 or because overkill on bikes. And why are they all there? And I thought this was a great little scene because Bob allowed me to play it more real than other directors maybe directed me to, or I found myself performing more real in this particular scene, like suspecting what they were up to. And, I think it worked really well because Bobby and Cindy are going to try to game the system without asking Peter. They're going to,
moonlight.
They're going to moonlight. They're going to bring in bikes and have Peter fix them and take a commission off of the bikes. But they were really successful, getting like 10 bikes over at the house almost immediately. To which Peter has integrity. You're not going to do that to Mr. Martinelli. So Peter will have some shortcomings in this episode, but loyalty and integrity are not those shortcomings. So he turns Bobby and Cindy, his own family, down, and the opportunity to make more money fixing bikes in his driveway.
Well, he was also pretty smart because I don't think that thing was going to be kept a secret very long. You got all those bikes coming out and everybody talking about it and getting around to Dad, and Dad's going to say, wait a minute, aren't you working over Martinelli's?
Yeah, well, I mean, you think, look at Peter in this episode is completely oblivious. So he's.
By the way, I do want to say about Jay Novello, who is Mr. Martinelli in this episode. He also did a very, very nice job. That could have gone over the top, as did so many times in our show, but not so much with him. I mean, I got he was from Italy. I got he was first generation. I got that he loves the bikes. I love that he wants to help you as much as he can, and all of that. And it was subtle in most ways, but always believable. It was really
constrained, but perfectly comedic in its broadness.
Yes.
But it could have gone, like you said, way overboard. I got to get a new boy.
A new boy.
Get a new boy.
I like you very much, Peter. You're a nice boy. I got to get a new boy.
I got to get a new boy. Peter comes in and another funny little interlude with Mom and Dad suggests to them that getting a bike is good for the health and that Dad, could get into shape.
Wait, you said coming in, and I just wanted to stop there because I noticed how you came in again because you were coming in through the sliding door and you did not you could hear it open and then you pop through, but you don't deal with it. You don't close it. You don't do anything with it. You just fling it open.
Rarely do we come in or out of the kitchen door, and that's the kitchen door that I come through.
Right.
I come right in. There is no door open. There is no door closed. And in a lot of scenes I've noticed, we don't shut doors. We live with our sliding glass doors open and no screen shut. And it was expeditious. It was part of what we had to deal with that wasn't real, but needed to be done to not get all tripped up on the door. But that wasn't my choice not to open the door.
Well, that
nonetheless,
would be
not only
Bob's.
You said you heard it open. I didn't even hear it.
Yeah, I went back twice to see, and you could hear it open, but that's just a sound effect. So it might have already been open. I don't know, but because you couldn't see the door until after you heard the noise, and then you just popped through and kept going.
I think the problem is because the way they had the drapes hung, so that the drapes hung on both ends, which you don't do if you've got a sliding glass door. You hang them on the side away from the moving panel. Closing the door meant dealing with the drapes, and that wasn't really. In other words, the entrance would have been botched, been slower.
Okay,
nonetheless, I love the scene too because he's able to tell Mom and Dad that riding bikes is good for them. And Mike thinks he's not in bad shape. Of course, Peter says, for someone your age, you could always be in better shape. But the funnier
I thought about that. He's like 37 years old now,
right?
At that, at this time.
Our idea of what old is all relative,
and never more so than now.
Seems like a young man to me.
Hey, there's something else I wanted to point out while we're in the kitchen, and this is another thing that was not given attention. But it was in this episode, and I know this was Bob's doing, that we have a chalkboard, and in the kitchen near the refrigerator, and it sits on the wall, but it was never used. It just wasn't used, but it was used in this episode 3 times.
Salt, syrup, and
bananas.
Bananas.
That's one. It says salt, syrup, and bananas. The first time we see it, it says, "Greg, call Jerry." Okay, and then the next time, Marcia,
Called Joan?
Joan called.
Peter actually, when he runs in asking if, I don't know what he says, if he says did Martinelli call or somebody call, he's kind of glancing, he's looking at that chalkboard to see if someone is called. He's actually, Bob has set it up at the very beginning as being sort of a reporting
Running
mechanism
joke.
of people outside the house, reaching in, if you will.
Right.
But it continues to change. You're right. It was really never utilized.
Yeah, it just kind of sat there like
I don't
a
even
prop.
know if it was always in an episode. In any case, so I think the funnier moment in telling Mom and Dad they should buy bikes, he tells Carol that she could get back in shape.
Nice.
Now, if you think about it,
Like you used to be.
This is our 4th season, and she's a mom, for the last 4 or 5 years. So when is he referencing? He didn't know her 10 years ago. I just thought it was really cute.
It's all part of the salesmanship.
And I thought that Carol,
she handled it very well.
Yeah, it was great. But yeah, you're seeing something. He's got some talent and convincing, being a convincing salesman.
Did you ever try and do that? Do you ever try and bring home things for your mom and dad to sell? I did. I remember sending away for seeds, flower seeds, and then I wanted to sell a box of them to like Girl Scout cookies to my mom and dad. No, these seeds they're going to be great, in the yard. Well, are you going to plant them? Oh no. So but you're trying to do the whole bicycle sale. That's pretty good.
Yeah, he believed in his product. Well, we're setting that kind of hook, that as oblivious as he is. Maybe he's got some ambition there, some idea that he can, there's a ladder of sorts. You can go from fixing bicycles to selling bicycles to owning a bicycle store or something. First day, he only fixes one gear. In the second day, Peter's found on the ground, again, even more greasy than he was in the first day.
Well, he still has his oil can with him.
Well, he reports that he fixed the brakes, to wit, we got Mr. Martinelli saying the brakes weren't, they didn't ask for the
brakes to be repaired.
They weren't broke. And Peter says, I know that now.
Very thorough, Peter is. Very thorough.
He is incredibly thorough. And looking back on it, this would be one of my personal issues. Maybe not as broadly described or displayed as Peter with something, but getting a project done on time is it's a difficulty for me because there's a little bit of a perfectionist in me. And I think you'll notice from my notes, I go a little too far.
Well, now that you pointed out,
yes.
Let's see here. On page 42,
I don't intend for this ever to be the case. I guess that means I'm not lazy, but I have a difficult time in doing, if I decide to do something, I get buried in it. It's a struggle. It's a struggle for me to get unburied. And if I was hired to do something,
was that a pun? Unburied?
Unburied. No, it just came out naturally.
No. Okay.
I don't want to be buried. I want to be unburied.
I have... I'm going to give you a raspberry in a minute.
I don't want to regurgitate it. So, yeah, I feel for Peter and then think back and think, was this one of the kind of personality traits they were picking up from me? Because I didn't even know it at this time. I wasn't even aware of it, but...
I'm sure of it. Yeah.
Thanks, Barry. I love the feeling of warmth and support I get from you.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
Looking back at my childhood, which is, something I need to do more.
Oh, well, you're getting the advanced course with this podcast. So.
Oh, God. So here I am. I am now the second day into a job, and we're not just seeing worried looks on Mr. Martinelli's face. We got Martinelli on the phone. I need a new boy.
I need a new boy.
And
please, any boy.
What does Martinelli do? He reminds Peter it's lunchtime. Again, Peter would have worked right on through lunch. Thank you, Mr. Martinelli. Go take a lunch. And I want to have a talk with you at the end of the day.
And he'll finish your job.
And he'll finish. That's what he tells the guy, the customer on the phone. I believe that's the order of it. But Peter, I guess, is now home and announcing because Martinelli has told him he wants to talk to him at the end of the day. Peter is somehow convinced it's because he's getting a promotion.
A promotion. And who wouldn't think that you were getting a promotion?
Well,
You're going to be a head salesman. Now, is this when you start shaking his hand with the oil can?
Yes.
Thanking him?
I think so, because this is when he says his sale, and then Mr. Martinelli go, huh? And he's thanking him, although Mr. Martinelli is saying, what? Yeah, I'm not getting, and he shakes, you see the oil can go under my arm, and of course then the arm
starts pumping.
The pumps on the thing, and of course 10 squeezes later, he realizes he's squirting him with oil.
That was the difficult moment. After 5 squeezes, how did you manage to sustain your focus to do the next 5 like it was an accident?
Obliviousness was my forte.
Okay. So you're playing oblivious. I think that was an actor's choice too.
Peter is oblivious to much of what goes on around him. He lives in his head and now goes home and tells the family that he's been promoted after 3 days. I guess it's the 3rd day at this point. And we also know as an audience that it looks like Peter's going to get replaced. So Peter's a little off the mark here. But what goes into motion when Peter comes home and proudly states to his family he's being promoted after 3 days on the job? What happens?
Tell me. I'm waiting with bated breath.
The one thing us Bradys seem to do a lot of, and I saw it in your notes, celebrate with a cake.
Cake.
A congratulatory cake.
There is no celebration without a cake.
Well, but they're going to celebrate because Peter got a promotion. They make a cake and put it in the cabinet. That's an interesting choice. It didn't go into the refrigerator.
I thought so too.
Goes into the cabinet. Okay. But us Brady's had a lot of cake. I know personally, parties and cakes that people, don't show up at or, for the wrong reason. I'm gifted with a lantern in one episode that, for lying. Now I'm getting a cake for, again, lying, because now that he knows he's fired, and at this point he does, the cake is made, but Peter is not told his parents he's been fired. He is told by Greg to tell him at dinner when because Peter does confide in Greg. I thought that was also an interesting choice. Peter is confiding in Greg, and Greg is not blowing the whistle on Peter or letting anybody know what Peter has said to him because, what? Greg is convinced that Peter's going to tell mom and dad at dinner.
That was my advice.
But he doesn't.
Have you heard? Amazon is now hiring for their new site opening soon in New Albany. Be one of the first to take advantage of launching a new career at one of the best workplaces in the world. Being a part of Amazon includes great benefits and competitive pay, plus many opportunities for advancement. So get a new job today and kickstart a new career tomorrow. Learn more about the perks of working at a new Amazon site. Go to amazon.com/start now. Amazon is proud to be an equal opportunity employer.
At JCPenney's 4th of July sale, it's all stars, stripes, and savings. Enjoy up to 50% off select furniture, mattresses, and window coverings. Plus, shop thousands of doorbusters across the store or use your coupon for additional savings. Take advantage of extended store hours Friday and Saturday. It's time to refresh your star-spangled manor. Shopping is back. JCPenney. Offers end 7/4. Exclusions apply. Doorbusters excluded from coupons. See jcp.com for details.
We actually act like real brothers in this thing.
And you know something? There were moments in other shows where these kind of interludes happened, but they weren't directed the way that Bob did, which made it feel like brotherly love. I mean, real brothers.
Right on. And here's another one. When you came up and asked me, or you told me about that, about being fired, and I said, well, you better, tell him after dinner and before the cake comes. But I'm laying in the bed reading something, and I noticed that there's a surfing poster up on the wall.
Is that the surfing poster that you brought to the set?
Yes. Yeah. So that would have been another one of Bob's things where he said, hey, what's going on there above your bed? What would you like to see? And I had the poster. I brought it in. They put it up. There it is.
See? Having his leaving his mark even on the set decoration.
And while we're talking about the creative things, it dawned on me something else. Where we were finishing dinner and you were getting the cake, that was out in the patio.
This was the other shot that I was
right on. This is where you did the volcano in an earlier season.
Bringing attention to. There was this barbecue that was back there. It was rarely used. It was on wheels. It rolled around. But let's just say that it was built in place in that patio, and it was never utilized. and not only is Bob utilizing it, but he's utilizing the outdoor area as a outdoor barbecue eaten on the patio. Family all
Being on chaise lounges and chairs
acting
and
very
on our
real.
laps. And
Very tall
Yeah,
shot.
very
I mean, the camera's high up, focusing on that area of the house, which I believe was one of the most underutilized areas. Because
I agree, and the reason, of course, is that wall didn't exist all the time. The wall that was between the little
fourth wall for the rooms. Yeah.
Right. So from that angle, you have to have that in. Whereas when we're sitting around that little kitchenette table and eating, whatever, we never saw that fourth wall because it was stored somewhere else. And so it takes time to do all of that.
Right. And I would imagine that production would always discourage a director if they had that in mind. But Bob at this point is, no, this is my episode. I'm going to direct it the way I want it. And I want that wall. I want the walls in so I can do this outdoor patio shot.
He came in with a little swagger on that.
Right. He had the power when maybe guest directors just said, I'm not going to fight you on it. It's your show. I'm just guesting as a director. Speaking of that, you might not have noticed, I did some research on seasons. Not all directors are credited.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not consistent. I don't know if that's because they didn't want credit.
That's funny.
But,
That's funny.
Robert Reed is credited in this episode, but I haven't done a catalog of it, but you got to look. It's not all the time are the directors credited.
When you see an episode next that does not have a director credit, bring it to my attention.
I will.
So I can now do a little exploring on that.
All right, so, Peter has been fired from his job, was advised by Greg to tell mom and dad at dinner. And then a cake comes out, and as Peter is trying to tell them something, a cake comes out, ends his approach to telling him at that moment, and then he's asked for a speech, and of course, he doesn't come up with anything.
Right. And may I just say, too, that's one of the brotherly things we're talking about. I didn't give you away.
No,
I watched myself during that, and a lot of the time I wasn't even watching you. I was just listening. But I never betrayed it. I never said, this is your choice. You're going off in your own direction. And so, I stayed out of it.
And then Peter is having a hard time having not told them.
Well, the guilt.
Later, as they're in bed. And, another nice moment for the two of us where, Peter jumps down and huddles over Greg, frightening him with his proximity.
Right.
Greg saying, well, mom and dad are probably not in bed yet. Peter cleverly saying, well, if I wait any longer, they might be, hoping that he doesn't have to tell them this evening. And Greg saying, coming up with a really kind of practical solution. I tell you what, because he's asking Peter, now Greg, for some other advice outside of telling mom and dad.
And I remember what it was. Why don't you ask Mr. Martinelli for one more chance?
And you follow it up with, because if he takes you back, you won't have to say anything.
Yeah, well, okay.
Right. I mean, in other words, we'll take a shortcut and you get the job back. You don't have to tell anybody you've been fired.
Right.
Brilliant. But you never asked, so what was the problem? Not mechanically inclined.
I didn't care that much. Jeez.
Earlier.
I'm about solving things. I don't need to know the details.
I mean, it's pretty remarkable that you get hired on a job that you have no talent for without anybody inspecting that talent.
You're a boy. Everybody
knows
how to fix. Everybody knows how to fix a bicycle, except Peter.
I did.
Well, he does. It just takes a while.
It takes him a long time. He gets distracted. Anyway, so now Peter hasn't told the family. Of course, the next day comes, and my favorite scenes of all time, I'll have to remember this the next time somebody asks me, what are your favorite shows or if they asked favorite scenes, it'd be the pigeon scenes. As soon as you're talking to pigeons, you're into some heavy art.
I got to point this out too. You pick one up. I don't know about that. I would not. I don't care how many times they've given that pigeon a bath. I don't want to be picking up a pigeon.
Well, first,
no way.
There's a pigeon on my hand, which is kind of cool. But you probably have forgotten how I was raised.
Oh, that's
my dad's
right.
from Brooklyn. And
that's right. You had a bird family.
I was raising pigeons from the time I was 6 years old. I mean, my brother and I entered them into the county fair. I mean, I might have been a suburban kid, but if I was in the country, I would have been a 4-H kid. And I was learning all about genetics, and also pigeons were my thing. You'll even notice when I picked that pigeon up, I picked the pigeon up correctly.
Oh,
its feet
gosh.
between your
So
middle
you're
finger.
raising prize pigeons?
I
Wait a minute, let me
was. I
just
was
see-
raising show pigeons. My brother was raising racing pigeons.
Peter's prize pigeons.
But they weren't those are big pigeons. Whoever the pigeon wrangler was, he had some big chicken like sized pigeons.
They're also known as
big.
flying rats.
Well, that's what people say about pigeons, but they're not. I mean, the fact is, any bird. I mean, a chicken is an evil little dinosaur, and pigeons are not.
They taste a lot better
not
than
quite
pigeon.
that bad. But
I'm pretty sure
pigeons are, they're kind of cool when you're raising them.
And I don't think anybody else is probably like thinking about what you were doing with the pigeon in your hand.
But there's another point. Like, did they pick pigeons because it's funny, or because they knew I could handle pigeons? Because I mean, if they would have given you the pigeon, apparently you wouldn't have picked it up, and it would have probably gotten away from you.
Yeah, I would have netted it.
Yes, right. I don't want to be friends with these pigeons. Peter clearly is friends with these damn pigeons, and
Yes,
they're
clearly.
the only ones that will listen to him.
Yes.
And another worthwhile line.
Of course, taking bread with you probably didn't hurt.
Yeah, that you feeding the pigeons and getting them fat with your lie that you're pretending to be. I mean, what is that? After school from 3:00, maybe 2:00 to 5, 6. Because 3 hours for like a couple of days. He's at the park talking to pigeons, feeding the pigeons, becoming best friends with the pigeons. Finally saying, "I know why you like me so much, because you're pigeons and I'm a chicken."
I just can't get. I'm trying to get this whole image of you wondering if like one of the writers like had a conversation with you and found out about your prize pigeon raising and went back to the writing table or the boardroom and said, "I've got an idea. We've got to have a scene with Peter and pigeons."
Well, no, but I think because we never met the writers, right? What did they know about us?
Exactly.
But now Sherwood would have known something about that. And I think that when you talk to pigeons, it's a depth of it's a place you go psychologically when you're talking to pigeons. You're in a park with pigeons as your best friends. You're on the edge of
I
not
don't
being
wanna know that
Brady Dumb
place.
anymore. You're
Yes.
almost homeless at that point.
I want to know.
And I think it's funny. So maybe the pigeons were just written in, and it was a convenient thing that I knew how to handle pigeons, because they would have written this for the Greg character, which I believe it probably would have been more appropriate to have Greg be the one that was not mechanically inclined, because I happen to be mechanically inclined.
Are you kidding? I was fixing the bike in every other episode.
Not what they wrote for you, but what in your personal life.
You're saying I'm not mechanically inclined?
That's what I'm saying, but that's because you're
That's
the
based
only
on
one
what?
here that can deny it, and I can own this and tell the world that Barry was not mechanically inclined.
I'm gonna
because I was
comfort you.
buried in this episode being claimed that I was not mechanically inclined. Already saying that our characters were born out of us, so now I've linked it back to me. Like I'm not I'm mechanic. Damn it, I'm mechanically inclined.
Let me comfort you.
I also raised pigeons. They like me,
isn't
damn it. I was good friends with those
And
pigeons.
you like me.
I just had a problem with the truth in this episode. The truth, you got to run from the truth. I was like Madoff in training, right? Let's just hope the problem goes away. We'll just wait a while longer. We'll lie to him a little longer. We'll get her deeper and deeper in a hole before it comes clean. It'll all fix itself. Well, when I do go back to Martinelli using Greg's great advice, if Greg would have asked Peter exactly what he was doing, and maybe he could have given him some fundamental advice to keep the job, or to convince Martinelli how he had done the job wrong. He understands that, and how next he would do it right. By just asking for the job back, Peter runs into a stone cold Mr. Martinelli saying, "No, Peter, some people make the frame. Other people paint the picture. Maybe you're an artist." I thought it was a funny little line. And of course, Peter runs out, or thanks him and walks out, runs back in hurriedly, asking for Mr. Martinelli to cover for him because his sisters are coming to the bike store and they don't know he's been fired. The next thing is he comes back to mom and dad, and they tell him that they've decided they're going to buy bikes. To which he tries to discourage them from riding bikes. that it's, for a man of his age, it can be hard on the heart or something.
That's so funny. Now, there's a character, an interesting character tick is even when Peter gets what he wants, he changes his mind.
Well, I mean, you want something desperately at one moment and then not wanting. And like their best friend is no longer your friend, it's your enemy. And how does a parent keep up with that? They think it's kind of odd that Peter is not the salesman now. Nonetheless, they find him the next day after they bought their bikes in the park.
Okay, let's talk about this entrance. I have the distinct impression that Mike Brady has never been on a bicycle before.
They did.
And Florence looked terrified.
They could have done Bob, he's 6'3". They could have done him a favor by lifting, either getting a bike that's his size and lifting the seat, or just lifting the seat high enough so his legs don't have to be parallel. Literally, his thigh is parallel to the ground when he's on the upstroke. And that is a very uncomfortable way to ride a bike. If you're a little higher.
I'll say, because he was barely riding it.
Right.
I thought he was going to fall over on every pedal.
But let's give props where they're due. If your parents were on the show and the scene was ride a bicycle, would your parents have been able to ride the bike?
I doubt it.
Right. My dad could have, my mom never. So we got two parents who can, maybe they haven't been on it in a while, but they rode bikes, and that scene was tough because it was slow and they were on bikes that they weren't used to at the wrong height.
I thought it was hysterical. I loved it. I thought it was great.
But they did come in tentatively.
Yes, they did. And shaken. That front wheel was like trying to balance the
you're going too slow.
Left and right.
Going too slow.
Yeah.
Later in the show, at the end of the show, that they'll look better on a bike.
Not much.
But not
by the way, we'll get to that.
We'll
get to that in a second. And here comes the next takeaway too. Right?
Well, everybody gets fired.
Yeah. Mike says.
But he doesn't say fired. Doesn't say fired.
Lost a job.
Lost his job. Which is an interesting choice because it could be construed as the same thing. But fired and losing your job can be two different things. So not everyone gets fired. Nonetheless, it makes Peter much happier to know that he's not alone in this world of being fired.
It's
warm. He was a failure at 14. That's where he comes up. Yeah.
That's a warm moment. For sure. Like Greg's advice, like the girls or Martinelli covering for you, or everyone being supportive. It was very, very Brady.
I would have loved to have seen that this would have had a lasting effect on Peter, but if I'm not mistaken, he gets fired in the future from another job in a few episodes by his sister.
Okay,
so this brings me to something that you wrote in your book. I'm going to read it back to you about this episode, and this is sort of a note about the character. Even in Brady reunions, Peter's pretty much a total failure. He's a struggling, unhappy airman in the Air Force when the Brady girls get married. Chris Knight says he believes Pete had to enlist after placing a bun in the oven, a local girl. Then you comment, yeah, right. And a struggling, unhappy businessman throughout Brady Christmas. And the Bradys, I guess Pete's as close to a black sheep as the Brady family will ever get. I think you're kind of right about the last part. But I don't remember him being a struggling businessman later. So why don't you elaborate? What do you think?
Well, I thought you were struggling because you were dating your boss, and you were uncomfortable with her being, more powerful than you were in that job.
Right, a little chauvinistic, possibly. Certainly written chauvinistically. Maybe I wanted her job, but she's my girlfriend. How do you handle that? But let's go beyond
as
that.
Only Peter can.
He is the only one to get fired, I believe, or multiple times, and the only one to talk to pigeons. And so I do think, he's the least apt to do Brady. He could easily fall off the rails. But I never read that before, and I wanted you to own it.
Thank you. A big part of what I was trying to do with the book is, in addition to throwing shades on the truth, was to be entertaining. So I wouldn't feel too offended about anything that's in there. Yeah,
I'm all freaking worked up here.
Okay, but this is how you close those things, though. You see something like that, and you think, well, no, wait a minute, what the heck did that mean? And I'm glad you did. So you feel okay now?
I do. Somebody needs to be the one pushing the envelope. right? And that's what they used Peter for, I think.
Pushing the envelope.
Well, as Jan pushed the psychological envelope, Peter pushed the envelope in a different middle child direction.
But we have another sort of creative stroke here in our very last scene when we're all bicycling in the neighborhood.
Yeah, what were you thinking?
I'll get to it. I honestly had to stop tape. And that was, they established that we all have bicycles, and then I guess they had a car following us and allowing each Brady to come into frame while, kind of like their own little close-up, and they kind of bicycle into frame, then bicycle out, and another Brady would come in. And then the old Gregster shows up, and I'm like decked out for a discotheque. I got these tight pants on, and these like half boots, and a turtleneck, and a French beret on my head. A painter's beret, a white one, on my head.
But I thought it was an interesting
like a French painter.
And if I'm not mistaken, I remember photos of you with that cap or a cap very similar to it. And do I remember a cap and the busted lip at one time? Didn't you? Was this around that time? Were you were wearing a cap? You just forgot about it.
I doubt that. I think it was a wardrobe.
I remember you
wardrobe guy's
pictures
suggestion.
in 16 magazine with a cap on. You went through a cap phase, and this is it. And you're denying ownership of it, and now want to claim that it was some wardrobe or forced you into the cap.
Well, I don't know. I can tell you this: if I forgot about it, there's a good reason for it. It looks so stupid. It was. I just thought, oh my gosh!
I thought it was, it was an interesting choice. I hadn't seen it before, and
it stood out. It did stand out. It did stand. No one else was wearing a beret.
No one else was, but no one else was riding with no-handed, which I am sure
Bobby did at the beginning.
When Mike did that, everybody on the production crew was probably panicked. We didn't need to practice it. We're just going to take off now. Follow us, and then Mike decides to take his hand. So nobody had the chance to tell him, "Don't ride no-handed. You kill yourself." But then at pulling up the end is Ann B. Davis, who looks like Margaret Hamilton on the ground.
And the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, totally comfortable on a bike. And if you've ever ridden a bike, if you know how to ride a bike and have to ride it with training wheels, it's not easy.
No, it's not. Especially if you're full grown.
You again see her physical ability. I mean, she's an athlete.
She has a very, very, very large comedic range.
Now, something I think that you know something about. The very last scene of the show, the tag, is between Mike Brady and Bobby Brady, because Bobby Brady now is going to get a job himself, and that job is to deliver papers. And he's going to have to, Mike is saying, "Bye, you have to wake up really early." Yeah, I do that, And then about delivering the papers, you can't do that on a bike. You need to have a car. And Bobby, you don't drive. Don't be silly. Of course, you delivered papers. Did you deliver papers in the afternoon, the morning? So you rode a bike, right?
I rode a bike. Yeah. In fact, I put my papers on the handlebars, which turned out to not always be a great idea. Because sometimes when you get all the papers nearly delivered, and you've got like two in there, they can turn sideways right into the spokes.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of kids lost some teeth delivering papers.
Yeah, I was older than Bobby was like 9, right? And I was older than that when as a matter of fact,
probably
pretty
10
close.
or 11,
10,
I bet,
10,
delivering papers, yeah. But you didn't need your dad to drive you around the neighborhood.
No, but boy, I could tell you when I could talk somebody into driving and I could load those things in the back seat and keep the windows open and throw them out the right side, throw them out the left side, and just drive down the street, that was heaven. Because there'd be like 40 papers to get rid of, and I could do it in about a quarter of the time.
Yeah, I mean, out of a car, it's always going to be better. But in this particular episode, Mike Brady's not too thrilled about the idea of waking up at 5:30 in the morning. But Bobby seems to be gung ho about it. Us Brady's. Maybe another one in training, in oblivious training.
Once again, my Brady bro, a very enjoyable afternoon romp back through our childhood, and this was fun that it featured you, and you have such great recollection of it. Also, that Robert redirected it.
What is the moral of this story? Is there one?
Well, we had a couple of them. One of them was be loyal. and be prompt. You've got to think about these things. You got to be loyal to your employer. You got to be there on time. You got, it's like telling a student they've got to, practice. Do a little bit of homework every day in order to be ready for the midterms.
But the moral of the story is something that we recognize from the story is something that you should be wary of or learn from. The kid loses the job, even though he's prompt, loyal, trustworthy, friendly, or everything. He checks all the boxes except for skill. Mm-hmm. Skill. There's no escaping the fact that ultimately, all those things are good in support of skill. So do what you're good at.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. You do the job the best you can, but you're not going to be suited for all jobs. And I thought it was great that Mike Brady was inclusive of that and saying, look, I've lost jobs too. And there's no shame in losing a job because you're not going to be right for everyone. But try them, especially when you're younger. Try them all and see what fits. It's like a shoe.
But I think it comes down to the truth because Peter does do quite a bit of creative hiding.
Yeah. Little dancing with the truth there. Yeah.
So always tell the truth. Or never hide from the truth. No matter how humiliating failing is, admit to it.
Right. And don't rub it in. Don't rub it in. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this little romp through how to succeed in business. It was great fun revisiting it with you, Mr. Knight. And I'm looking forward to our next podcast, which will be next week. So get ready, everyone, and join us again. Until then, I'm Barry Williams.
And I'm Christopher Knight.
We are
the real
Brady Bros. Brady on.
Thank you.
Have you heard? Amazon is now hiring for their new site opening soon in New Albany. Be one of the first to take advantage of launching a new career at one of the best workplaces in the world. Being a part of Amazon includes great benefits and competitive pay, plus many opportunities for advancement. So get a new job today and kickstart a new career tomorrow. Learn more about the perks of working at a new Amazon site. Go to amazon.com/start now. Amazon is proud to be an equal opportunity employer.
Hurry in to Mattress Firm's July 4th sale. Get a king bed for the price of a queen or a queen for a twin and save up to $500 on Sealy. Plus, get a free adjustable base with qualifying Sealy purchase, up to a $499 value. Or shop Tempur-Pedic, the most highly recommended bed in America, and save $500 on all Tempur-Breeze mattresses and get a $300 instant gift good towards sleep accessories. Only at Mattress Firm. Restrictions apply. See store or mattressfirm.com for details.